sketchy cell phone service out and people that are in bad situations. Aid is trying to make its way in.
Vice President Kamala Harris sat down with All the Smoke podcast hosts Matt Barnes and Stephen Jackson to discuss her presidential campaign agenda. Again, she gave her standard answer about growing up middle class.
I am blessed to have an incredible family and incredible friends. My best friend from kindergarten is still one of my best friends.
That's crazy.
Right? Stacey Johnson.
Yeah, that's dope. I love it.
We used to go to the clubs and her father Seville.
Guilty pleasure, do you have any?
Yes. One of my guilty pleasures, especially when I'm on the road, are my Doritos.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha says the more Harris talks, the more it reminds voters, even Democrats, that she does not belong here.
I watched this interview in full, and the only word that came to mind, and you could even see it with the interviewers, the way they were reacting, the only word that came to mind was cringe. Again, Kamala Harris was asked about her plan, how she's going to help those struggling to make ends meet with the cost of goods, cost of living overall impacting so many Americans, and she did it again. She talked about growing up in a middle-class family. And after 3 minutes of word salad and a bumper sticker stream of consciousness, she never answered the question. No sane and sober person could have watched this interview and came away with any confidence that she is economically literate. And the more she talks, the more it reminds voters, even Democratic voters, that Kamala Harris may not be the right person for this job.
An organization continues to push for the public to submit comments on Real ID. Chris Woodward explains.
Citizens Council for Health Freedom is calling on the American public to submit comments on the latest Real ID regulation issued by the Transportation Secretary Administration, or TSA, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Twyla Brace, president and co-founder of Citizens Council for Health Freedom.
Oppose what the Department of Homeland Security is doing with Real ID. They are clamping down. They're planning a 2-year campaign of graduated enforcement, and there's a public comment period that ends on October 15th, and we are trying to generate as much opposition as possible. There's 44% of Americans do not have a Real ID. It's a national ID card, and it's meant to eventually be part of the whole international global identification and tracking system. And so we have to get Americans to refuse, and we're trying to get Americans to go in and make a public comment and say they don't support this.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has signaled that more rate cuts are in the pipeline, though their size and speed will depend on the evolution of the economy. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hi, it's Sandy Rios, your old friend from the morning show. So many crucial and frightening events are unfolding before our eyes. I'd like to invite you to come over to the podcast, Sandy Rios 24/7, so that we can work our way through these difficult times together. AFR.net, any podcast platform, or at sandyrios.com. And one more thing, my book, God's Velvet Hammer, is now available on Audible. So come join us at Sandy Rios 24/7, and remember, God's Velvet Hammer, available at Audible.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Tuesday, October the 1st, 2024. Tim Wildman here with Wesley Wildman. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning.
Christopher Woodward.
Good morning.
And Ray Pritchard.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing?
Why do I always feel like I'm supposed to say something more than just good morning?
No, good morning.
I always feel that.
Well,
I feel like you expect more of me.
Do you want to share?
You know what? No, I don't really got anything to share.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. There you go. That's maybe what I was looking for. Something different.
I didn't know you spoke Italian.
Bonjour.
Now you're going to confuse your audience.
All right, Chris, you got two international.
I'm speaking in
languages.
tongues. I need you to translate, Ray.
That's
right.
Ray's Baptist, though I don't think you're going to
That's
get
right.
that.
I don't even have that gift. I'm not sure.
Although there are some Baptist-costals that
There are.
There are.
But now we have exposed our audience for anybody that's new to
it's not good to be
what
exposed
they can expect.
something
That's
in any regard. But,
this
so
is what they're going to get today.
yeah, yep, it's going to be. All right, so much to talk about going on in the news, and we want to thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Ray, sometimes I ask you this, and I'll ask you this now. Give us a good word from the Bible this morning here.
Well, here's a good word for stormy days, uncertain moments. Jesus and the guys in the boat. Jesus and the boys in the boat, right? They're crossing the Sea of Galilee. It's at night. And you know, Tim, the storms can come up really fast on the Sea of Galilee, and a violent windstorm. I mean, hurricane force winds come blowing across the Sea of Galilee. And where's Jesus? He's sound asleep. It'd been a long day. He's sleeping while the storm is raging around them. And the boys, scared to death, James, Peter, and John, all of them, they woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we are perishing?" We've all been there. We have all been there. "Lord, my child is sick. Don't you care? Lord, my marriage is in trouble. Don't you care? Lord, my career has come to nothing. Don't you care? Lord, my family's in trouble. Don't you care? Lord, I got cancer. Don't you care?" We always feel that way when the storm comes. And here's the good news. If Jesus is in the boat with you, you're going to be okay. Though the rains come down and though the waves tend to start to overflow and though the wind is blowing, if Jesus is in your boat, you're going to be okay. So Jesus gets up and says, "Silence and be still." And the wind died down and it was perfectly calm. And then Jesus asked the question, "Why were you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" So here's the good news, folks. Keep calm. Jesus is in the boat. He's in the boat with you while the storm is raging. He's in the boat with you while you're scared to death. And when the moment comes, Jesus will stand and speak the words, and the storm will come to an end at the right time, in the right way. Trust in Jesus. Keep calm, friends. Jesus is in the boat.
Amen. Amen. As we used to say in the Methodist Church, may the Lord add his blessings to the reading of his inspired word. That's what I grew up with. You remember? I don't know if y'all did that. It would be responsive reading, I guess, where those who grew up in churches that did that. That wasn't just the Methodist Church, but pastor would read, or somebody, a layman would read the Bible, and then you would read it back to him and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so
Did that.
you remember that?
Yeah. Shout out to St. Andrews in Amory, Mississippi. Yeah.
Shout it. Do we still do shout outs?
We do. I do.
Okay.
I'm that old.
But you notice they never shout it.
That's right.
Never yell it.
Shout out.
That was close. That was.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for that, Ray. Where were you? Where is the story?
This is Mark chapter 4, and it's great. And it's only about 10 or 11 verses, but folks, we've all been there. Just want to say it. We've all been there. And if the storm is raging around you this morning, grab your Bible, read Mark 4, and remember, keep calm. Jesus is in the boat.
Amen.
Well, if I could add one thing to that, and I don't want to mess that, I'm hesitant to mess the devotion up here, but just something that I've been teaching Bennett, and I've been reminded of lately.
Your son.
My son Bennett, about one of my favorite, probably the favorite, my favorite characteristic about God is that he always keeps his word. And so I've told Bennett at times, I say, even myself, I'll do, I'll tell you here's what we're going to do, and I'm going to do my very best. And sometimes I'll fail because of sin, and sometimes I'll fail because circumstances change, as far as keeping my word, that is. I said, but God never changes. He always keeps his word. And even when it doesn't seem in the moment, like you were describing, doesn't seem like in the moment that he's present or that he's there or that he cares, we can trust his word ultimately, and that's where we can put our faith in, and that's where the burden of anything goes away, is because he's constant, and in due time we will reap if we don't give up. what Hebrews says. And so just to add to what you're saying, well, one of the things I took away there that was the same as what I've been teaching and what you just shared is that God never changes that we can trust Him. Put our faith in Him.
That's so well said. Our circumstances change all the time. You can have, as you know, Wesley, you can have a good morning and a bad afternoon, right?
That's a good way of looking at it.
That's happened to all of us. Circumstances change. The Lord does not.
Amen.
I'm comforted by the fact Jesus was sound asleep. He was so comfortable in the boat. He wasn't worried about anything. He has the ability to speak, and the problems go away. So trust in Him.
Amen. Amen. All right, Chris, what's your first story?
Well, when you are reading your Bible today, flip it over to Psalm 122:6, which tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Now would be a good time because in virtually every channel that has a broadcast signal, we're looking at stories about how the White House believes Iran is preparing an imminent missile attack on Israel. Tehran has been vowing retaliation after a series of recent Israeli assassinations. As we've discussed in the show, Israel has been taking out Iran-backed terrorists that work for or worked with Hamas and Hezbollah, other Iran proxies. The White House believes it is about to begin and is already warning of, quote, severe consequences for Iran. The White House put out a statement this morning saying, "We are actively supporting defensive preparations to defend Israel against this attack. A direct missile attack or military attack from Iran against Israel will carry severe consequences for Iran." According to an Axios story that Steve Jordahl, stellar reporter with AFN, he just brought me this, it says a source with direct knowledge said the assessment in Israel and the U.S. is that the scope of the Iranian attack will be similar to Iran's first ever direct attack on Israeli territory last April. That drone and missile attack was largely repelled by Israel and its partners led by the U.S. So very turbulent times today in God's country.
Yes, Israel, the Holy Land. So we'll see what happens. There was a similar threat against Israel, a month ago, and nothing happened.
Right.
Remember that?
Right. We were waiting day by day
right.
for the Iranian counterattack. You just wonder when they killed Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, right? And
Israel did. Israel did. Yeah.
Israel did, and also, I mean, they basically have so far chopped off the head of Hezbollah. Couldn't exist without Iranian support. So you think there's going to be some kind of counterattack. We live in strange times, Tim, where the Iranians are preparing to attack, we think, and the U.S. Okay, Tim, this is an interesting thing. It's not just that the U.S. warns Israel. They do it publicly. So the whole world knows.
You said U.S. warns Israel. You mean U.S. warns Iran?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I know. I'm sorry. U.S. warned Israel that Iran is about.
Oh, I got you.
So in the old days, this was done privately, but now it's being done right out in the open.
Well, I'm wondering if Israel already knows that Israel's has been on heightened alert since this time last year. Well,
and this was as a result of a year ago from this upcoming Monday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with this all started
a year ago.
I'm talking about what's been happening with. Listen, Hamas and Hezbollah and Israel have been having skirmishes and fights forever. So, but this really intensified. That is Israel's aggressive response.
Mm-hmm.
After October 7th of last year, when we all remember that day when 1,100, I think it was, Israelis, some of them American citizens, were butchered on that day by Hamas terrorists who went into Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And then since that time, Israel has taken a very aggressive military position there because their goal is to wipe out Hamas and
set them back for decades.
And on the north front, the Syrian, more of the Lebanese border, the Hezbollah terrorist organization. Let me ask you, and we've explored this question before, Ray, but it does need an answer. Maybe there are new listeners. If we can come up with an answer. Okay, this is Iran. Is it Iran or Iran? To borrow from Alan Jackson.
Depends on where you're from.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're in Mississippi, it's
what is it?
Iran.
How come I don't know that?
And then
so
if
it's
you're
Iran?
in Michigan, I'm just kidding.
Iran.
I'm making all that
It's
up.
probably really called Iran. We just
I'm making all that
You're
up.
making all that.
I apologize. You took me serious.
You're trying to pull a Tim on Tim.
Yeah.
Here, and it almost worked.
It almost.
Okay, is it? What do you go with, Ray? Iran or Iran?
Iran.
Okay, Iran. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's the question. Iran is basically 1,000 miles from Israel, right?
Right.
As the crow flies, as they say. I'm just guessing it may be a few more miles than that, but they're not border countries. They're not fighting. They don't have any history, Iran and Israel, of fighting over territory that I'm aware of. Okay. Right. Except that Iran, the mullahs there, the ayatollahs, which are the religious leaders of the Islamic faith inside Iran, they control Iran. They're the ones who have this issue, not necessarily the Iranian people. I don't think that's the
Right,
case.
I think that's correct.
It's these ayatollahs who have a iron fist control. They control the military and the police in Iran. This happened in the 70s when the Ayatollah Khomeini, the revolution there, when they took out the Shah. Remember that?
Right.
The Shah was friendly to the West, friendly to the U.S., but when he was thrown out, overthrown, coup, whatever, these fundamentalist Islamic ayatollahs took over, and ever since then they've been having their rhetoric against Israel and the Jews. So I'm saying all that to give you a backdrop to ask the question, Ray, why is it that Iran is so fixated on a country they don't border, they have no history of fighting over land, and yet they've taken. Are they taking up the cause of the Palestinian Arabs there, and that and that Israel's an illegitimate state? But even so, why do they care about that?
Well, Israel is the most successful nation in the Middle East. I'm simply talking from the standpoint of the economy, the wealth they generate. The nation that Israel has built a great nation out of the sands, so to speak. And let's face it, there's a degree of jealousy going on here at the fact that Israel and America, despite who might be in power at any given point, Israel and America have been friends from the beginning. We've supported them. So I think a lot of it is driven on one level by fierce envy and jealousy. And the other part, Tim, is driven by this fundamentalist Muslim ideology that says, in order to establish, remember we used to talk a lot about the caliphate, the caliphate that would, the global Muslim caliphate. Well, you can't have that with a Jewish homeland in the Middle East. You can't do that. Israel has to be wiped out, has to be. And so the mullahs who drive so much of what the government does in Iran, they hate Israel on theological terms, and they won't be happy until the Jewish people are eradicated and the nation of Israel is gone forever.
So it's okay. So it's not so much maybe. Well, it is. I guess they would tear it over land because they want to, but also they just hate the Jews.
Yep.
Okay. And they also, Iran I'm talking about, because I looked it up. It's like 1,500 miles, 1,400 miles from Tehran to border.
Yeah, you got to fly over Iraq to get to Israel from Tehran.
Well, we'll see what happens, but Israel's been on heightened alert now for a long time, and they have a very strong Iron Dome system. And listen, it wouldn't be past. It wouldn't if Iran themselves launched some kind of weapons at Israel. Wouldn't surprise me if Israel didn't ramp it up and fire something even stronger back, not at Hezbollah, not at Hamas, but to Iran. I mean,
well, and that's why we've got the U.S. carrier groups over there.
Right.
I mean, to send the message, if you attack Israel,
we've got their back.
Yeah. Israel's been pretty clear for about 6 months now that they don't care what the world is telling them.
No,
they're fed up.
I agree. Israel has been over their history very sensitive, especially to what the U.S. says and what the leader of Great Britain has to say. But in this case now, I think they're looking at survival, and they just say, we don't care what the world thinks. I think that's what Benjamin Netanyahu said the other day before the General Assembly of the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care what they say. We're protecting our people and our land, and we'll do whatever it takes. Go ahead, Wesley.
Well, I was just going to say, it almost seems like they could almost, if they haven't already said it, they could say, well, we tried y'all's way. That didn't work. So we're going to try it this way.
Yeah, we're going to try it our way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did you guys see the pictures of I call them bunker buster missiles that took out the Hezbollah leaders in Beirut? Was it Beirut or near there, Ray?
It was in Beirut.
Okay.
Yeah. South side of Beirut. Yeah.
These missiles that Israel used penetrated the ground like, I don't know, 60, 70, 100 feet deep. Did you see this? Created massive craters.
You see the film. There's a great big building there.
Yeah.
Right? A great big building, and then it's gone.
Right.
Then there's rubble and a hole in the ground. I mean, that is some strong missile attack.
I read where the Hezbollah leaders were hunkered down like 60 feet. I don't know if this is accurate. I'm just reading one news story. But hunkered down like 60 feet underground. But Israel used missiles that penetrated that far into the ground and collapsed on their
And it's not nuclear.
hideout.
This is just
conventional.
Conventional missile warfare. By the way, Tim, yesterday the Israeli Defense Minister, I believe his name is Gallant, he said Israel right now is fighting a 7-front war: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. A 7-front war at once.
Yeah. All right, next story, Chris.
Well, this one is possibly going to be carrying out for several days if the parties don't agree to something, that being this port strike. We have the story on our website, the headline being dock workers at ports from Maine to Texas go on strike. This is the labor dispute that we discussed at length yesterday, but they didn't reach an agreement on a new contract that involves higher wages and some concessions in the way of automation here. So the dock workers at ports from Maine to Texas are on the picket line, not working. There's some stuff, a lot of stuff at ports not going anywhere. And the concern is that over the next few days, certainly over the next few weeks, if this continues, you're going to see stores running out of items to sell. There could be fewer food items on the grocery store shelves, particularly in big cities where there's a lot of demand for canned goods and other items. This is not what you want right now with an economy in the shape like ours is, and it could be very bad for everybody, Democrats, Republicans, regardless. I would be shocked if it's not a question tonight for Walz and Vance in their debate.
Yeah, we have not mentioned this yet, but tonight is the vice presidential debate. Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio, the VP candidate under President Trump. And then you've got Vice President Harris and her pick, which is Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. So Walz and Vance tonight, where are they?
They're in New York City. It begins at 8 p.m. Central. It's going to be hosted by CBS, although, like in recent debates, you'll be able to watch it on Fox. And
what time is that? Like 8 o'clock Central? Or
8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. I mean, by the time people are starting to wind down and maybe yawn a little bit, this thing's going to be kicking off for millions of people on the East Coast.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. We'll report on it tomorrow. I will be able to watch it later tonight, maybe some clips. Is this one of those things where maybe I watch highlights like you do from a football game, huh?
Yes.
See who scores touchdowns and how they're scored, Vance or Walz.
Whether or not somebody catches a deep pass and then ping-pongs off a couple of Georgia defensive men, I can't guarantee.
We're going to be able to see which one wins, logic or emotion.
May I make a prediction?
Yeah, go.
Yes, Tim, you may.
Okay.
Thank you. I think J.D. Vance is going to shine tonight.
I agree.
Oh, I do too, yeah.
Don't you, Ray?
He is so well-spoken. And, Tim, he's just gotten better.
He's just getting started. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, he's just getting started. He's getting better every single day. And this going to, whatever you thought about the last two, the presidential debates, it's going to be nothing like that. And I think he's going to dominate tonight.
Yeah, but one thing,
he's quick on his feet.
He is, and he has media experience. Waltz, the governor from Minnesota, he's a hardcore, big tax and spend government program, woke socialist. I mean, this guy, and I think, I could be wrong, I think that kind of ideology is really hard to defend if you have somebody who knows how to attack it.
Right.
And to borrow from your word earlier, Wesley, expose it for being anti-American, anti-business, anti-capitalism, and in the case of his support for the transgender. Remember, now I'm going to say something here, warn people, children in the audience here, not too graphic, but Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, this is not exaggeration. He authorized putting women's how do you say tampons?
That's right.
Is tampons a brand or a?
It's a.
Or is that a general? Do you know? Ray?
Feminine hygiene products. I think.
I'll just say that. Let me just say it like that.
Yes.
Because I don't know. So feminine hygiene products in boys' bathrooms
at school,
in public schools in Minnesota.
Taxpayer funded.
Oh,
yeah, that's not a Bigfoot story, right? That's
No,
true.
That's legit.
Has he defended that, or I hope that Tim?
I'm sure he has. I don't have.
I
a
hope
quote in front
that
of
J.D. Vance will bring that up tonight, or at least I doubt one of the moderators will, because that what I'm saying is that shows you how extreme left he is.
Right. Yep.
You know, Minnesota, Ray. We've talked to Jan Markell about this. Minnesota used to be heartland America.
Right.
And it still is in many ways. Obviously,
Right. Outside of Minneapolis, it is.
Yeah, but bringing the Somalis into the Twin Cities, they almost all vote Democrat. I don't know how many there are now, but Obama placed thousands of Somalis in the Twin Cities. And then of course, big cities are typically blue anyway. But they've been outvoting the Republic. It used to be basically a purple state. I'm talking about Minnesota. And you get outside of the Twin Cities, there are a lot of people who are very conservative. Right. But they're outnumbered.
That's right.
They're outnumbered in Minnesota. All right, we shall return momentarily with more of today's issues. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
A man in the Old West was being tried for stealing a horse. You need to remember now that stealing a horse in the Old West was a very grave and serious offense. A person could be hung if found guilty of such a deed. It so happened that the man was accused of stealing a horse from another man in that town whom no one liked. The man whose horse had been stolen had always made it a point to get the best of any person with whom he had any dealings. He had never tried to do anything good for anyone other than himself. Consequently, the man whose horse had been stolen didn't have a single friend in the entire community. Well, the case was tried and presented to the jury. The evidence against the accused man was pretty strong. After about 30 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned to the court chambers. "Gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?" the judge asked. The chairman of the jury stood up. "Yes, we have, Your Honor," he replied. "What is your verdict?" inquired the judge. There were a few moments of silence, and then the chairman spoke. "We find the defendant not guilty if he will return the horse." Well, after the judge had silenced the laughter in the courtroom, he admonished the jury. I cannot accept that verdict. You will have to retire until you reach another verdict, said the judge. So the jury went back into their room to deliberate toward another verdict. Now, no member of the jury had any particular liking for the man whose horse had been stolen. At one time or another, he had gotten the best of each of them. About an hour passed before the jury could reach another verdict. They re-entered the courtroom. They took their place in the jury box, and the courtroom grew silent. "Gentlemen of the jury," began the judge, "have you reached a verdict?" Well, the chairman of the jury stood up. "Yes, we have, Your Honor," he replied. "What is your verdict?" asked the judge. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone eagerly awaited the verdict. The chairman read the decision by the 12 good men tried and true. "We find the defendant not guilty, and he can keep the horse." The courtroom burst into laughter. Well, I guess the moral of the story is that it pays to be interested in people other than yourself. If you spend your life trying to take advantage of others, never caring about them in any way except what you can get from them or what they can do for you, you will end up a loser like the man who lost his horse. If you desire a friend, then you had better be a friend. If you desire for other people to help you, then you had better help other people. If you desire justice at the hands of others, then you had better practice justice toward them. Regardless of what you may think, the old biblical admonition is true. We do reap what we sow.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139, 23, and 24.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for listening. Pardon me. Thanks for listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Wesley, Chris, and Ray, and we thank you again for listening. Well, joining us right now is our good friend Steve McDowell. Stephen McDowell, joining us from the great state of Virginia. He's the president of the Providence Foundation, and we had Stephen on, I don't know, last week or the week before. We were talking about our trip to Boston, Mass., which is a new spiritual heritage tour for us coming up in October of, well, this time next year. But I already have people signing up for that trip. It'll be the first time we've been there, and we look forward to seeing Boston and the surrounding area and all the history there. But that's not why we have Stephen back on right now. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Tim and fellas. How are you?
Hey, how much weather did you all get there in Charlottesville, or did you, from the hurricane?
Well, we had lots of rain, just a little local flooding, but nothing like Southwest Virginia and the western part of North Carolina. Those areas were devastated, but we didn't have anything like that.
You have a lot of friends in that area down there, don't you? People you know?
Well, I do know people who live in those areas. I don't know anybody that was directly flooded and wiped out some of those smaller towns, or of course even Asheville, which is not smaller. I don't have close friends that live there, so I haven't talked with anyone.
All right, so I was asking our producer Brent why we had you on this morning, because I forgot. And I'm just going to freely admit. I'm just going to freely admit that. I'm not going to pretend like I know why we invited you on. Seems like we were inviting you on about a video you made about education. Is that right?
Well, we are actually working on a full-length film called "Educated for Liberty," and the title of the film describes really what it is. We have a website, educatedforliberty.com. People can go see the trailer, but what we cover in this film is we point out that parents have the right and responsibility to govern the education of their children. Today we have a lot of our status schools trying to usurp that authority, and they declare we as the professional educrats controlled by government knows what best for your children. But we make this point, and we also point out the church should help parents in fulfilling this responsibility, because it's not just that parents should assume responsibility. What's the whole goal of education from a biblical perspective? Why does the Bible tell us that we need to have knowledge of truth? So it's to get to know the Lord. He is truth. This is why colleges and schools were started in early America, so that they might know Jesus Christ, the only true living God, as one of the original rules of Harvard College said, but also that they might learn how to live in liberty. It's difficult for man to live free. Freedom is not the default state of fallen man. If you leave man to himself, he will not get better and better. He will spiral downward. So Scripture, we know, tells us if we need to biblical character and a biblical worldview in order to know how to live in the great liberty Christ gave us, and that education in early America, that was the goal. That's what it produced. That's why America became the most free and prosperous nation ever in history, because through education, it passed on the character, the worldview that gave birth to this unique, exceptional nation, and that produced great flourishing. But as we all are aware, especially in recent times, our educational system is not preparing people to live in liberty, that more and more people are embracing socialism, that they're embracing government is going to solve all our problems, and we're seeing a rise in all kinds of problems that is the fruit of bad education, because, education is like a seed. The Bible teaches the seed principle many times. Good seeds produce good fruit. Bad seeds produce bad fruit. Early education in America were good seeds. They produced good fruit, an exceptional nation. Unfortunately, in recent times, we've been planting bad seeds, and that's why we're getting a lot of bad.
All right, what's the answer? Is it homeschooling? Is it Christian schools? Is it parochial? What's the answer? What do you recommend?
Well, there's many options, that are available, and especially in recent years, we've seen it grow. Homeschooling, private schools, Christian schools, co-ops. Combination of these things. There's many different ways that we can fulfill that duty and responsibility, but it's parents' responsibility. We need to know, how are we building our children as disciples? We know in the Bible Jesus said we're to go and disciple the nations. That certainly has to begin with our own household and with our own children. We're training and discipling them. So in the film, we will point out, and by the way, we interview 20 or more, educators and leaders in fields of Christian thought. We've got a number of folks from the American Family Association on there, including your son, Walker Wildman, but many other people, from David Barton to George Barna to Alex Newman to Abraham Hamilton, Dade Bratt, former congressman. So many people, they're going to help tell this story as we interview them, and they share these things. But in the film, we will present here options at our website, educatedforliberty.com. We have some now, but we're going to have a whole host of resources, of links to organizations that can help you. Okay, what can I do? I need help. How can I do it? And so we'll have it a one-stop shop for parents and school and churches who want to do something about sowing good seeds, to help them in doing that.
Let me ask you this: you and I know others have questions here, but can you give me an example before the United States? Was there anywhere like? Was there ever an America before America in terms of people being able to elect their own representatives, or what we call self-government?
Well, there was kind of some seeds of that in some nations where Christianity went and influenced. If you trace back the history of where Christianity has went in the last 2,000 years,
Europe, basically?
Elements of that. There were, some places in Europe, but again, it wasn't for all people. There was a select few people who began to take part in governing themselves and selecting their leaders, but it was really only in the United States. That's why Alexis de Tocqueville, that French political philosopher who came here in the 1830s to find out, wow, what made America so unique and special, that he called us an exceptional nation, that there hadn't been a nation like this where the people were free to, yes, elect their representatives, free to educate their children, free to get an idea, invent, create wealth, to prosper, free to have property and govern their property and use their property. There's a lot of unique freedoms that were part of this exceptional nation of America. And again, the premise of this film is that was the result of biblical education. And if we want to get back, preserve America as that great nation of liberty, we have to restore biblical education to the nation. And the film presents and discusses not only what that we need to do it, but then what practical steps can we take? How can we do this? And by the way, we're going to make this film free. And I know you guys said you stream it on your video platform so we can get it out to as many people as possible because the message is so important.
Hey, this is Wesley here. I just wanted to say the thing that stood out most important to me of a priority is the fact that you emphasize that it starts with the parent's responsibility to make sure in whichever of these options and or combination of options that they're making sure that it is what God has called them to do. And because I understand that once you introduce the options, as we've mentioned, there will be a handful of people in each camp that thinks their way is the better of the other ones. But ultimately, making sure that the parents understand that it's their responsibility to look into all these options and then make that decision, because so many times I've been in conversations with parents where they start on the back end thinking, well, this particular education is not good, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, it's the parent's responsibility to make those types of decisions.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, right? I mean, Stephen, excuse me, did you finish your thought?
I did.
Now
don't know if I made a good one, but I finished it.
my kids are grown, and I mean, I'm a grandpa now, so this doesn't affect me except for my grandchildren. But let me ask you this: I can't teach algebra, or so how do you answer something like that? People say, well, I can't teach certain subjects. How am I supposed to homeschool? Go ahead.
Well, of course, homeschooling is one option, but as Wesley was saying, his point is exactly right on, is that parents don't have to teach every subject, but they have the right and responsibility to govern the education. So they might need to get tutors. That's why schools were started in early America, to supplement what the parent might not be able to do, but the parent still knew what they were teaching, knew the philosophy of the teacher. They understood the character and worldview of the teacher. Because, look, education is not neutral. It's impossible to have neutral education. That's what some educrats try to present it as today. But all education is religious. All education is built upon a set of presuppositions that are rooted in what a people consider to be ultimate. So we need to know what's going on. And by the way, we saw since COVID, when students were at home and a lot of parents began to watch what they were learning, a lot of them said, whoa, I never knew this. I didn't know they were teaching these radical ideas. And that's why more and more people, parents, assume the responsibility. It wasn't just homeschools, but many private schools, such that I think today over 15% of Americans are not in these government-controlled schools. It used to be like 90% went there. Now more and more being homeschooled or going to Christian schools or co-ops or many other things, because parents began to see the radical ideas that are taught in many of our schools, and I'd say most every one of our schools, just varying degrees of radical, because in our government schools today, God is extirpated. We can't have God in our schools. I know there are a lot of good Christian teachers in schools. Right. I know some. One of my daughters-in-law is there, but they're being more and more constrained on what they can do. They don't have the freedom to teach what they see to be truth, and many times they're told, you got to read Heather Has Two Mommies or whatever it is to these little kids.
Yeah,
I just think personally, I just think that my dad just didn't want to learn quantum mechanics. Is the reason he's looking for? He's looking for an excuse here and an out.
Only got so many hours in the day.
Because I feel like I could have benefited from that.
I was studying
the theory
to
learn.
I was studying relativity.
Yeah, really?
I was, I was tracking with Albert Einstein for a while there, and I just didn't have time to go do silly little algebra.
Little quantum mechanics.
Yeah, quantum mechanics. I didn't have time for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, but let me say, one of the most important things about education and biblical education, it teaches people how to think, how to reason. Mm-hmm. That they were given the tools, the methods of education in early America that sparked thought, and they began to research and reason, relate, and record the things that they did. Today, education neglects a lot of those methodologies and gets kids just to memorize a bunch of facts, and a lot of those facts are wrong. And so if you inspire and teach children how to reason and think, they can learn quantum mechanics for themselves.
Yeah. All right, so what's the website to watch the trailer?
It's educatedforliberty.com. Educatedforliberty.com. People can go take a look at the trailer. You can sign up. We'll let you know when the whole film is going to be available to see for free, as I said, and it's going to be just later this year. It's an exciting project, and I know God is in it. He's blessed it in many ways, and we look forward to how he might use it to open the eyes of millions and millions of Americans.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Bless you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Stephen McDowell, president of the Providence Foundation, joining us there. Hey, Ray, you want to comment on what Stephen was sharing?
When I think about the mess this country's in, he's exactly right. He's speaking to what is the foundational issue. Nothing's more important than the education of the next generation. And I wonder to myself, I'm going to ask a question I can't answer. Is the public school system, and duly noted, there are exceptions across the country, but the public school system, because of the NEA and others, they've moved so far to the left. Is there any real hope of reformation or reclaiming public education in America, apart from some kind of direct
Well, thank
miracle?
you for throwing that out there and leaving it for us to answer. First of all, that's very generous.
And that's what I was going to ask Stephen. If you
well, Stephen would probably say no. If I had to guess, he would probably say no. Let me just say this, and Stephen acknowledged this. There are many fine Christian people that are in the public school system as coaches, administrators, cafeteria workers, whatever the case may be. That for these folks, they're adults. This is a ministry for a lot of them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's a calling they have. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So we're not talking about that aspect of it, but we're talking about when you consider who's going to educate your children. Okay.
Right.
As a parent, who are you going to hand over your children to educate them, and what are they going to be taught? That is the question that every parent has to answer.
Yeah, that's right.
There's disagreement in the listening audience, in the Christian community, about whether public schools are appropriate at all.
Sure.
But because a lot of public schools are forced to teach things that even maybe the teachers or administrators disagree with, but because it's coming from the state or because it's coming from the federal government, they have to contend with teaching this stuff when maybe they don't agree with it necessarily. So that's a problem. That's why I do think you've seen homeschooling growing like crazy.
It's exploded.
Yeah, homeschooling's growing like crazy. the co-ops, what Stephen was talking about, the Christian schooling.
That's right. Yep.
is
And
growing.
another thing that could help with the new administration and the presidency is someone who's pushing for school choice, because school choice will also is one more factor we didn't get a chance to talk to with Stephen McDowell there, but that also is an alternative long term to help counter some of the public school issues, because if you have,
Are you talking about where you can transfer, where you can pick the public
the
school you want to go to?
yes,
or
and you're not forced to go to a school based on where you live. If you so choose, want to drive 45 minutes in one direction to go to school, or if there's another school within even closer than that, you're not bound by the school based on where your address is.
I would one up you and say this, Ray, and of course this has been talked about.
That's a counter for public schools.
Yeah, yes, I would say I would be in favor of getting a tax credit if you don't want to send your kid to a public school.
Yes.
Public schools get X amount of dollars per student from the state.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So if you say, I want to opt out of that and not send my child to the public school, rather I want to send my child to I want to homeschool, or I want to send my child to a Christian school, for example, why wouldn't you just give that couple, that parent or parents, a tax credit of the equal amount that you would otherwise take out of their check to pay for the student to go to public schools?
Some places do that.
That seems fair to me.
It does.
And who could oppose that? Why would you oppose that? Go ahead.
And one final thought on this for me is there also, too, as it's lost in the discussion, and I'm not naive to the fact that the state is still governing and the federal is still governing public schools. I'm not naive to that when I say what I'm about to say, but there's also a strong difference between a southern small school, public school, and a northern and a
big city,
big
Los
city,
Angeles,
Los
New
Angeles
York,
school.
whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a drastic
yeah.
difference, because I've been in public schools, and I won't name names because we don't want anybody coming after them.
Right.
But I've been in local public schools for the last 10 years, or within an hour drive here, small, maybe 200-300 students. They've got Bible verses on the wall. Their teachers pray with them.
Oh, yeah.
There's all forms of. Here's the bottom line: they're not hostile to Christianity. In fact, they encourage Christianity.
That's why it's hard to make a blanket statement sometimes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When I was in ninth grade, in the is further back than I want it to be, one of our coaches was my biology teacher. And I don't remember much of biology class, but I remember this day. Our teacher, who was a Christian and is still with us on this side of eternity, he got up and he shut the door of the classroom, because he always kept it open, but he got up and he shut the door of the classroom. He sat back down at his desk and said, "The state requires me to tell you that some people think we came from monkeys."
But
that ends today's discussion.
Yes. Yes, I remember that. I had a teacher do something
Coach,
very similar.
if you're still listening, thank you for that.
Right.
That's
All right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio. We're probably going to talk more about this topic when Steve Jordahl joins us next hour. But did you mention this earlier, the dock workers?
I did, yes.
Okay, this is potentially a very serious situation. Folks, when we just an aside here, when we mentioned before that we have no president now, and I'm talking about an effective president leading the country, engaged. We don't have that. We haven't had that in a few months, right? At least a few months. We haven't had that the public has known about.
Correct.
And we know that because the Democrats kicked him out and said, you're not competent enough to be president and you're going to lose the election. Talking about Joe Biden here. Since why they didn't remove him, when you make that kind of determination that you're not capable or you're not in good enough shape to be president, I don't know why. Well, I do know, but I'll just ask the question rhetorically. I don't know why especially the Democrat Party, the Republicans couldn't do a lot about it because they don't have the numbers, but why would the Democrat Party say, you're not capable of being president anymore, but we're going to leave you there for about 8 more months?
Yeah.
Okay? While the world's on fire. We think that's maybe a good idea for our country to not have a leader. So Biden is AWOL, right?
Sure.
And we have this is just at this current moment. We have Israel and Iran at each other's throat. I'm not saying they're equally morally. I'm just saying the world is watching right now. You have these longshoremen are they're striking.
They're on strike as of midnight.
The dock workers, they're also called longshoremen. I got that right, true? This says from Maine to Texas, so the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. The country's about to feel that in a big way if that continues on, because we're talking about ports where all our stuff is brought in from around the world, and then we buy it. That's about to be. If this is that's
If you think grocery prices are high right now, right?
Dry goods.
We all feel they're unbelievable. You just wait about 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, evidently the president is not involved and engaged in anything about this.
He said he didn't want to be. He was
okay.
asked.
I'm not saying the president should try.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I'm not saying a president should try to impose his beliefs on this, but the president's always in the past, when you have a major strike in this country
that affects the economy.
And millions of people, they get involved. They try to mediate or encourage the parties. And I don't know, it doesn't sound like to me Biden cares about this, but because he doesn't know why would he? He's not up for re-election.
Yeah.
So you got that going on. I mentioned too, these are big deals. And then you've got the aftermath of the hurricane, which is the hurricane, which is having an enormous impact on Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina, the Carolinas, parts of Virginia and Alabama. I mean, so I'm talking about there are multiple big issues that needs a president and an administration engaged, and the Democrats have basically said Biden can stay till January. And it makes no sense to me how you can say on one hand he's not capable of doing the job, but we're going to let him stay there for 7 more months. Go ahead.
Also, too, on yesterday, the New York Post, I'll see if I can find it.
It's not 7 more months from now, 7 more months from when they made this determination.
That's right.
Back in June or whenever it was.
New York Post yesterday had an article where they reported that 600,000 illegal immigrants in this country, as of yesterday, have criminal records.
600,000?
Have a criminal record. Now, I don't have it in front of me, but they took the 600 and they broke it down. Okay, these people have committed violent felonies. These people have stolen. These people have whatever. But 600,000 illegal immigrants as of yesterday have criminal records. So that's taking place too.
Well, yeah, we have big issues facing our country right now, and we don't have a president that's engaged because the Democrats. I can only blame the Democrat Party because they don't give a rip. And there's not much the Republicans can do because they don't have the numbers to force the issue.
That's right.
Right now, we'll be back momentarily with more of today's issues.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You're aware of how important it is to stay engaged in America's culture war. One way American Family Association helps you to do that is through action alerts. Here's how it works. Once or twice a week, we'll email you about matters critical to America's families, and we'll offer ways to take action. Visit afa.net today and tap the Action Alert sign-up button.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A short dock worker strike might not result in higher prices. Jenny Casola has more.
The supply chain situation has eased since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Michael Pierce, Deputy Chief U.S. Economist at Oxford Economics, says the risk of a short-term dock workers strike reigniting inflation on a national level is very limited. Pierce says there's a very different demand-side picture than a few years ago, and the inventory is much different. He says demand is no longer overheated and consumers are much more cost conscious in their spending. Though the strike might impact some prices at the wholesale level, the impact on consumers would be relatively low.
Hurricane Helene leaving North Carolina communities crippled in its wake days later. Robert Ray reporting on the aftermath from Asheville, North Carolina.
There are so many communities in peril right now that have not been able to get communication because of the lack of cell phone service and power outages. It's not just Asheville that has been decimated and people going through these issues. There are so many people that are still missing, hundreds unaccounted for because they cannot communicate. There are at least 128 people that have lost their lives across multiple states in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. National Guard is on the ground. Elected officials are moving around. There are many aid groups, but it's not happening fast enough, unfortunately, for those cut off.
Tulsi Gabbard of the Trump transition team claims the Biden administration's reaction to the hurricane is similar to their reaction to the wildfires on Maui, Hawaii.
My frustration and anger at the lack of adequate response, even at a baseline level, from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden reminded me exactly of what our communities there on Maui faced in the wake of that tragic and historic wildfire that took over 100 people's lives.
The vice presidential debate is tonight, and both campaigns are preparing for the face-off. Trump 2024 campaign director Tim Murtaugh says Walz has a big job on his hands.
Because he's got to go out there and defend Kamala Harris's record and her reckless agenda of raising taxes on everyone and contributing even more to the inflation that she's already caused. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance is going to go out there and do a great job. He's the best promoter and defender of Donald Trump and his policies that we've gotten. It's going to be a great matchup. We're looking forward to it.
A dystopian authoritarian dictatorship is just around the corner, if you believe what two Washington insiders who came within a hair's breadth of leading the country have to say. More from Steve Jordahl.
Misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation are the buzzwords rattling around the left in this country. According to the Democrat elite, democracy could come to an end if someone said something untrue or misleading. Two recent examples: Hillary Clinton wants to put you in prison if you tweet out misinformation.
There are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda, and whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence.
The question, of course, is who determines what is misinformation. Democrats tried and failed miserably during the pandemic. Masks are 100% effective and ivermectin useless against COVID. John Kerry, speaking at a World Economic Forum event, says his circle of influence has been very worried about misinformation getting out.
There's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have some accountability on facts, et cetera.
As far as more speech being the antidote to bad speech, the Bill of Rights, which inspired that sentiment, is just in the way.
Our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
And Kerry says democracy is far too fragile to survive opinions that the government thinks are wrong or just inconvenient.
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
American Family News is available online at afn.net. And download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Q.
Tired of campaign ads, candidate rhetoric, and a mailbox full of flyers? Are you thinking of sitting out this election? Don't do it. As Christians, it's our responsibility to be salt and light. How can we influence our nation for godly values if we don't make our voices heard? Show your support for candidates who share our biblical values by voting wisely. Use iVoterGuide.com as a free tool to help you identify those candidates. Be a good steward of your vote on November the 5th. Vote wisely with iVoterGuide.com.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Issues is the name of the show. I'm Tim with Wesley and Ray. And as always, we appreciate you listening. Joining us now in studio is Steve Paisley Jordahl. Good morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
So, Steve, last the last few minutes of the show, we were talking about the crisis that are big crisis that are facing our country at this moment. And you were saying you had a story on that too, right?
The dock workers?
The dock workers being one of the crises.
Well, there's several crises.
Yes, crises.
Let's
Dock workers at ports from Maine to Texas began walking picket lines early Tuesday in a strike over wages and automation. That's what I have here.
They
for
will.
AFP.
They are. They want, I hear, a 70% increase in salary.
By the way, who are they negotiating with?
That would be the government, I believe, because the president. There is a. You remember when Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers back in the 80s?
Uh-huh.
He invoked a court case or a law, an act, and that allowed him in emergency situations to take action that he probably wouldn't be allowed to do if it was just regular business. And President Biden has said he will not invoke this act, which might be, it's interesting to think, it might be payback for getting kicked out of the race because shortages in the shelves and a hard life right before an election with the Democrats in power, that cannot be good for them.
Yeah.
Okay, I have an answer to my own question here, and okay. Here's the answer. The question I had was, who are the longshoremen or dock workers negotiating with?
Yep.
And according to Google, which is always right, the International Longshoremen's Association, i.e. the dock workers, from Texas to Maine, their union representing 45,000 port workers had been negotiating with something called the United States Maritime Alliance Employer Group. They want a 6-year contract ahead of midnight on September 30th, which was the deadline, which passed yesterday. So I've never heard, this is the first time I've ever heard of the United States Maritime Alliance Employer Group. I'm not sure. Anyway, have you ever heard of that, Ray? No?
No. But did you see the video of the union president?
I got that, in fact. Yeah.
This guy is pretty good.
This guy's name is Harold Daggett. He's the president of the International Longshoremen's Association. And I mean, this guy is right out of Goodfellas or the Godfather.
Yes, he is.
He's got a gold
He's a New
chain
Yorker?
on. He's a New Yorker, got a gold chain on, and he's
pretty good.
And he's talking about what this strike will do to this country. And then listen to this, cut 8.
Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They're gonna be like this. Who's gonna win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract, and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you.
Wow,
I just got to say, before we get too far into this, y'all could have saved this for Ed. He'd have had a lot more fun with this than us, okay? We're going to do our best
The
here.
Boston guy maybe could have done a New Yorker impersonation.
Yeah. A lot closer.
You know what I didn't like? Listen, unions can be good, unions can be bad. It depends on the union leaders, and that's my view.
Yep.
However, and I think there was more of a time for unions in the past, maybe the earlier part of the 20th century, when you had a lot of abusive workers, than there maybe is today. But putting that aside, I didn't like when he said, "I can." Did you hear that?
Yeah.
He should have said, "Our union, if it stays on strike, will cripple this country." Okay.
Yes.
But he said, didn't he? A couple
It's
times.
very personal.
You notice that, Ray?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like
old
you
time.
like
That's old time union talk right there.
Yeah, you better deal with me. I'm the leader, and if you don't deal with me, I'm gonna cripple this country.
What I don't understand here, and this shows you my ignorance here and all this, but what have they not already? When he says sit down and make a contract, well, you would think they'd already tried that. That's how we got to the strike.
That's true.
So,
Well,
so he makes it sound like it's on them and it's that simple.
Well, the union is accusing the Maritime Employers Union, or whatever that was called, of bad faith negotiations.
Okay.
That's typical. And there's just two notes I want to add to this, just for factual accuracy. The strike, as you mentioned, Tim, is from Maine to Texas. The West Coast will still be open. What that means is all of the ships that would have docked on the East Coast or in the Gulf have to go through the Panama Canal and then line up and queue up on the West Coast. In the middle of COVID, we had the dock workers couldn't or didn't unload ships because of COVID, and we had shortages then and just a supply chain issue that's likely to happen again. And there are two exceptions that the union is making to this strike. They will allow military ships to come in and offload and cruise ships to come in and offload. Military for national security issues and cruise ships.
You mean using their workers?
Yes. And cruise ships, because they say they don't want to disrupt people's plans, travel plans. It's probably a good PR move. You don't want to get the public all upset with you.
Yeah.
So those are the two exceptions to the strike.
Well, I couldn't. Again, that's the first time I've ever heard of the United States Maritime Alliance Employer Group, is what the AP calls it. I'm not sure exactly what they are, what they do, but anyway, that's the situation. And if they don't come to terms, don't come to an agreement, then the average person out there is about to feel some pain.
Yep.
And in the next few weeks.
And the inflation. Oh wait, we already got that problem.
Yeah, right.
It only gets worse.
Bad inflation.
Bad inflation.
It's going to be Harrisflation.
Yeah.
So, anyway, go ahead, Steve.
All right, we are still watching what's going on the East Coast with regard to recovery from Hurricane Helene. This has snuck up on a lot of people, unless you're living in the affected areas.
Mm-hmm.
We've become so used to hurricane landing. It's hard on a community or two. It's hard on half of a state, maybe. And 8 Days of Hope comes in, and then it kind of rolls off of the news. This is along the lines of Katrina. We have 134 are confirmed dead. There are still hundreds missing that they don't know what have happened to them. Entire towns have been just washed away. There was a town that they used for 2 Hollywood movies, including, I think it was it Dirty Dancing with what's his name?
Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze. They did in this town. Anyway, that's gone. That town is gone. The name is escaping me at the moment. I saw a video of a casket being rolling down a river that had been somehow collected in this flood. It is of biblical proportions. This morning in our devotions, we had a friend of the ministry. His name is Gavin Haven.
Gary Haven.
Heaven, I guess is what he pronounces it. He says.
Haven.
So anyway, Gary is on his way with his helicopter. I had a chance to go out to the airport where he took off in this helicopter and talk to him briefly before he went, and I will play you what he had to say. This is a friend of yours, Tim.
Yeah, he's on his way from Texas to North Carolina to help in the recovery and rescue and whatever they need him to do, because they don't have enough helicopters there yet in that region, and they need them because of the situation in especially in North Carolina.
Well, this is what Gary told me, Cut 11.
So people that live in the mountains in that part of the country are trapped. They have no electricity, which means the refrigeration is out. So they are literally trapped. They need food, water, medical supplies, baby formula, and but to get these supplies to them, the only way to do it is with a helicopter.
Is this a ministry for you?
If resources can flow through you to meet the needs of others, you'll be given more resources. And of course, I'm older now, so I've been able to kind of test that biblical principle and prove it out. This is an opportunity for God to put resources that He trusts me with into the hands of people in need.
So good for him. He was on his way to North Carolina, and this was kind of a halfway point for him, so stopped to visit us, and he went on.
To be ferrying food from base to mountain communities that have been cut off in many cases.
You know, I know this is a broad general prayer, but we need to pray for the people who are rescuing folks and who are helping folks, and I'm assuming the National Guard's out all over I mean, these and things are still. You know, you have waters that are contaminated, Ray, with chemicals.
You know, here it is on Tuesday. We don't really know the extent, how bad it is. You hear words, Tim, like apocalyptic,
right?
A disaster of biblical proportions, and people throw those words around, but I think that's exactly what this is. You've got communities of somebody says it's like an island. You've got little islands of 100 people here and 150 people there, way up in the mountains, and there's no road. The road's been washed out. It's been destroyed. They can't get out. You can't get in. They don't have any electricity. It's a tragedy of enormous proportions, and you're exactly right, Tim. We ought to be praying for all of the friends, Franklin Graham and Samaritan's Purse, but there's so many other ministries that are joining in to help, because this is not a crisis that's going to be solved this week. It's going to be months.
Oh, the cleanup. Did you guys see the video from Asheville? I know there are many other communities affected in the same way, but I'm just talking about. I just saw the video of Asheville, North Carolina, and I was like, because having been there 4 or 5 times, I knew these streets, and these streets are like, covered up in sludge, and basically a river ran through the city because of the rain. Yeah. I don't think, I was trying to read last night, I don't think the water went into the Biltmore mansion. The famous.
It was all up around it.
But it was up around it.
Right up around it. Yeah.
Well, they call it the Biltmore Village,
right,
which is not the same as the Biltmore Mansion.
Right.
But it's nearby, and that's why they call it that. But it was flooded.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I think the mansion was spared. But still, I'm talking about
places where the Interstate 40 is
right,
shut down. And I saw one of the maps put out yesterday by the North Carolina, government transportation folks, and have little dots where there's a trouble spot. It's just covered. All of western north is just covered with those spots where nobody can get in, nobody can get out. It's going to take a long time to recover and rebuild.
And a lot of money.
Yeah, and if you weren't with us yesterday, just the Cove, which is Billy Graham's conference site, is closed for business because it is a staging area for likely Gary Havens is going to be flying out of that.
The Cove is on a hillside. It's halfway up a mountain, so it's safe. But you're right. It's probably 3 miles from, maybe 5 miles from downtown Asheville. There. Next story, Steve.
All right. Well, we talk about the weaponization of the federal government. Maybe this is another example, maybe not quite as weapony, if I can use that word. But yesterday, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, fast-tracked the sale of about 200 radio stations, many in southern Florida, that were part of a network called Odyssey, and they sold them to a new network formed by George Soros. Normally, this would take a month or two at least to get through because George Soros is bringing a whole lot of foreign ownership into this. And if you have more than 25% foreign ownership, there has to be a lot of vetting that the FCC does, but they fast-tracked it. And the Republicans on the FCC, there's 2 Republicans, 3 Democrats, are saying It's obvious why they did this. They wanted to do it before the election. So what does this do? This takes away a lot of conservative voices. You know, conservative radio. The liberals have never figured out how to do radio. They're good at TV, but liberal talk has never taken on conservative talk. The Rush Limbaugh thing is huge, and now some of those voices, right when voting is starting and through the election, may be silenced.
We had Abe on the show about this about 2-3 weeks ago, but that was before the decision's been made.
Yeah.
Are you saying it's finalized?
It has been made, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday it was finalized.
Where are the radio stations located?
Mostly in southern Florida.
How many?
About 200 in total.
I bet you they're national.
Yeah, I think they are. But I mean, there's they
anyway,
were focusing on Spanish language stations, and because the Hispanic vote is.
So are they Spanish speaking stations? Are they going to remain Spanish speaking stations?
I'm sure that they will remain Spanish speaking. They will remain Spanish now Democrat mouthpieces in Spanish.
All right, next story.
All right, let's talk about. Congratulations to Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, today is his birthday. He's the first president ever in the United States history to reach 100 years old. And so today is Jimmy Carter's birthday. We wish him well.
You know what they say?
What do they say?
You know what they
I don't
say?
wanna-
Sound like Trump. I'm just telling you what they say. They say.
Yeah.
That's what Trump does. When he doesn't want to
That's
call
right.
somebody out, he's just say, "There." You know what they say?
What you're doing here?
Yeah, I'm doing here. So they, you know what they say is, every man, or I should say every person to be.
That's
gender
right.
neutral.
Yeah, 2024.
Every person wants to live to be 100, except a man that's 99.
That's right.
Yeah.
Huh? Right? See what I did there, Ray?
No, we'd like you to explain that a little more. Yeah,
Explain that, right.
Thank
I've
you,
never
Ray.
heard that before.
Y'all don't get it?
No, we just want to see you.
Steve
He
explain
doesn't
it.
want to stop at 100.
Okay, if you're 99, you don't say, I just want to live to be 100.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, because that you're saying, I just want 2 more months, Lord, on
Yes.
earth. Huh? And then I'll go. No, I'm just saying, survival instinct being what it is, we all want
Right.
to live as long as we can. So nobody says when they're 99, I just want to make it to 100.
Okay.
Thus the joke.
Well, first of all,
I thought you were going to step in one there, but you got around it.
You handled it, finessed that really good, Tim.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations to President Carter.
Yeah.
It's notable achievement. He's had cancer for a number of years, and read an article yesterday. He was one of the first people to get this immunotherapy when it was still really new, and has lived, I think, years longer than they thought he would. So, happy birthday! But as far as being, let me pose this as a question, and I'll just leave it out here. Have you ever seen Tim, a 99-year-old, and said, "I hope I live to be 99 too"?
Yeah. Well, that's a Listen. Yeah.
I'm home in heaven.
I know.
Then.
I know. If nobody wants to outlive their health, right?
No, you got that right. That's it.
Nobody wants to outlive their health or mental or bodily health. Nobody wants to, but that does happen to some people, unfortunately. It might happen.
I know it's all in God's hands, and we
Yeah.
got to say that, but.
Yeah.
But,
Okay,
pray
guys,
that
we're
you
getting
don't-
over spiritual here. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
but it's true.
It is true.
Hey,
It is true.
listen, Wesley.
Not
Wait
over.
till you're 72,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I am. You start.
No, I know.
You
You're
start.
sitting there.
You start thinking of that more than
Yeah.
when you're your age. But you're coming
That's
in my
right.
direction. You get to a certain age and you go,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I got whatever number of years left.
Right.
But I'm not sitting here praying, God, let me live to be 99.
100. Yeah, no.
We got breaking news.
Or is it breaking?
Yeah, out of Israel.
Okay.
The OSINT Defender website, which is kind of real-time intelligence there, reports multiple individuals have been shot at a light rail station in Jerusalem Boulevard in Jaffa. Suspected terrorist attack. 5 minutes ago, they reported 3 killed, 3 seriously injured, 4 moderately injured in the shooting attack. And then 3 minutes ago, other possible gunmen and shootings are now also being reported in the Jaffa suburb of southern Tel Aviv. Oftentimes when these kind of things happen, the numbers and the places where these are happening are off.
Did you say Jaffa?
Jaffa.
Okay.
Well, the Jaffa, J-A-F-F-A.
Jaffa. That's south,
biblical Jaffa. Yeah.
That's south of Tel Aviv. Been there many times. Ray has too.
Yeah.
So that's just another hour in Chicago.
It is, except that if it's a follow-up on...
I'm not trying to... I probably shouldn't have said that. I don't mean to make light of the situation. I'm just saying that...
Well, they're on pins and needles over there because our government has said attack is coming in the next 48 hours from Iran, and they said it's going to happen at night. So there's still a few more hours.
But a gunman shooting is not a ballistic attack.
No. Although we do have sirens going off in Israel, kind of all around Israel.
Yeah.
You wanted us to flag you at 3 minutes.
Yeah, I do.
Here we are.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind ending with something that's not politics or terrible?
You got something
please.
I do. Okay,
I want to vote no.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just kidding.
I'm
kidding.
Y'all watch the Alabama game over the weekend?
Football. This is great.
Yeah. All right. So
Alabama beat Georgia.
Alabama beat Georgia, and they beat Georgia on a last-minute touchdown throw.
I saw it.
It was something to behold. Jalen Milroe hit 17-year-old Ryan Williams with a 70-some yard football pass for a touchdown, and this is what it sounded like on TV. Cut 10.
And they take a downfield shot, and the catch is made. It's Ryan Williams, still spinning free. Touchdown, Alabama! They answer in one play. 75 yards for the 17-year-old. Are you kidding us?
Did you know that they must be following college football in Tokyo and in Japan? Because there was a Japanese call as well. Japanese language call to this play. Listen to cut 9.
追い上げる。先ほどはオーバーテイク取りを見せた。さあ、今度はどういうことになりますか。川端が見えてきてぴったりだ。斉藤が。うわー、マッシュ。うわー、ものすごいクラッシュ。とんでもない状態で大クラッシュ。
I don't know what happened, but boy, was that exciting.
They were into it, baby. They were into it.
So that was a Japanese call?
That was a Japanese call.
I'll tell you what happened, because I was watching. That was the most remarkable second half of any college football game I've ever seen, or as good.
Yeah.
Because it came down. Georgia was behind Alabama 30-7.
Which is where I cut it off.
Yes, right. 30-7. I think at halftime.
That's right.
Halftime. And so I text my brother, like halfway through the fourth quarter. I said, "Are you watching this?" Because he likes college football. So you watching this? He said, "No, I turned it off at halftime." I said, "You better turn it back on."
Yeah.
Because Georgia came roaring back.
Took the lead
with like 2.5, 3 minutes to go. The very next play is the play you just heard.
Yeah.
And Alabama scores to win.
I'm just thankful that Steve brought in our cultural appropriation for the week.
That's right.
That's right.
My wife, Allison, she says, if Alabama has a chance to win at the end, they will.
Yeah.
Because they are anointed of God.
They seem to be.
It's just a fact, folks.
That's my wedding vows.
It's just uncanny how they can pull it off at the end, if they need to. Most of the time, they just destroy people in the first quarter. But anyway, have a great afternoon, everybody. See you tomorrow.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Say, what would you do if you were a new Christian and you didn't have a Bible? Probably say, well, I'd hop in my car, I'd go to a Christian bookstore, or I'd have one shipped to me. What if the